Welcome to Sales Players, the #1 podcast for top players in B2B sales.
Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out in the world of sales, this is the show for you.
We're all about bringing you fresh, actionable ideas to supercharge your rev gen game.
We dive deep into the mindset, habits, and tools used by top performers in the industry. Generate more leads, close more deals, and build wealth and financial security in B2B sales.
So if you're ready to level up, you've come to the right place. Join the conversation with other like-minded sales players and continue the discussion beyond the show.
Hit the subscribe button, tune into the Sales Players, and let's start winning together. Hey Sales Players, before we dive back into the conversation, I wanted to introduce you to a game changer in the lead generation tool arena, and it's called Lead Feeder. Imagine having the power to identify companies visiting your website, tracking their behavior in real time, seamlessly integrating this data in your CRM. Lead Feeder is not just a tool, it's your secret weapon for efficient and targeted lead engagement. What sets Lead Feeder apart is its ability to provide detailed insights into visitor behavior, helping your sales team to prioritize efforts and close deals faster. Ready to revolutionize your approach to leads and deals? Head over to leadfeeder.com for your free demo today. That's leadfeeder.com. Don't miss out on the future of successful lead generation with Lead Feeder. Plus, if you go to the show notes, we actually have a special link that will give you a 21-day free trial instead of the normal 14-day free trial. Go over today and sign up.
This episode is sponsored by Accord. Accord helps revenue teams drive execution excellence by enforcing their standards for how they sell, onboard, and expand with prospects and customers. Revenue teams can ensure flawless execution of value selling, medpick, account planning, business cases, mutual action plans, and more with Accord's deal execution platform. If you've been a long-time listener of the show, you've probably already heard me talk about how I use mutual action plans, account plans, and business cases to manage and close my enterprise deals. Well, Accord has created a better way to manage the process. They're your solution for deal execution. Your buyers are going to love it because it makes their evaluation process so much easier by helping them seamlessly validate and onboard new and existing vendor partners. I've been super excited to be using Accord to manage my 6- and 7-figure enterprise deals. So for sales players looking to get started with Accord for free, use the link in the show notes to sign up today.
We have Sarah. How do you pronounce your last name?
Brazier, like the TV
Brazier.
show Frasier, but with a B.
Okay, I love that. And so I don't want to butcher the name of your newest product, but what the project that you're working on and that you're co-founding, but how do you actually pronounce the name? Is it Dimmo?
Dimmo.
Dimmo.
Yeah.
It's like Dimmo.
Yeah. Like Troy, my co-founder, is from Texas, and he basically calls demos.
Demos? Okay. All right. Yeah, I can get a little country in there, a little Kentucky in there. Look,
yeah, exactly. So he's
okay.
Yeah, so when he talks, he's like, yeah, let's go check out, like so-and-so hasn't submitted their demo yet. And that's just how he says demo. And so it's Dimmo.
Okay. And so when did you all launch this product, and really tell me about what does Dimmo help with?
Yeah, so Dimmo, we launched exactly 5 weeks ago today, which if anyone is listening to this recording, we recorded on June 19th.
And it's 11/11. Yeah.
And it's 11/11. Wow. We're super lucky. Wow. Make a wish.
Super lucky.
But Dimmo is a demo marketplace. So essentially, if you are a buyer of software or if you need software, typically what your life looks like is you do some Google searches, you look for different solutions. It's all based off of SEO and whoever has the best Google recommendation to get you the answer that you want. Then you go onto those websites, you click around, you request a demo, you fill out a form, you maybe get a call from an SDR a couple days later or an email sometime in that week. Maybe you get on a call with them. They run you through a list of questions, and then they say, okay, great. Well, I'll connect you with my account executive. And then that account executive asks you the same list of questions, but maybe in a little bit more detail. And then they say, okay, great. I'll show you a demo on our next call. And the whole time, all you wanted to do is just watch the stupid demo in the first place. So we're just cutting out that front end of the sales cycle. So you can go and watch demos and get answers. And then you decide, yeah, this is actually a solution that I would want to buy. or I'd want a trial, or I'd want to learn a little bit more about. And then you click a button that says request more information or ask a question, or there's a whole bunch of different lead gen questions that we have. So essentially what we're doing is shortening the front end of the sales cycle, helping buyers find products that they want, allowing companies that are selling to talk to actually qualified buyers who are genuinely interested in the product instead of just trying to get answers. Because I was account executive for 7 years, or in sales for 7 years. Everybody has had the experience of getting on a call and someone's like, just show me the demo. And you're like, oh, but my sales manager won't let me do that unless I ask you these 15 questions.
Really? Is
Pretty standard.
Is this a thing? Like you can't. So okay, I guess I'm in the wild west of SaaS. Like
Chase isn't you're not in the venture backed startup world where everything has to be very, sort of formulaic, which is not a bad thing, by the way, but it can get carried away, to your point, Sarah.
Yeah. I mean, I worked at Gong, where our whole thing was helping companies drive adoption of sales processes and figuring out what the best sales processes are. And there's tons of data around, if you're going to run a discovery call and you're going to run a demo, you really need to understand the problems that someone is coming to you with. The issue is that there's typically a disconnect. Someone has done their research to a point and really wants to see the product before they're willing to give up that information. But the account executive has friction because they don't want to demonstrate the product until they really understand the problem that's going on for the buyer. And so if you can just say, okay, here is a demo, here is the basic overview of what we do. Or if you're a new company that is seed round or is self-funded, you just want exposure and you want more people watching your demos and seeing how you're serving the market. And so I think it kind of solves those problems. And then you can continue to run your enterprise level sales cycle, but you're just talking to people who have a sense for what they're looking at, who know what they want, who are ready to come with questions and ready to describe their problem in more detail.
And how many clients do you already have, like with the launch of just being 5 weeks old?
Yeah, so we launched with about 30 customers, and I'd have to check in HubSpot, but we have, I don't know, close to 200 companies on the website since we launched.
Wow.
Not all of those are paying customers. So we are in the process of converting them. Essentially, like a paying customer gets a lot of data. Yeah. So
you're sort of doing the Postmates style business of basically, I used to own a juice bar and smoothie bar. And when Postmates actually came out, these people would just come in that weren't like coming to a smoothie bar, that didn't look like our demographic. And they were ordering these like $15, $20. I'm like, why are you ordering this? Keep it green with no honey. And they were actually just using a credit card, buying it, and then taking it to the person. So I didn't even know it was a Postmates delivery driver that was helping do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, like, companies that want exposure can have their demo on Dimmo without having to pay us anything. And then if you do want to be able to get insights into how many people watch your demo on a given basis, what kind of personas are watching your demo, if you want to add multiple demos and be able to describe different use cases and get really tailored, then you need an enterprise license, or we have interactive demos on Dimmo now. So if you have a Nevadic demo or a story lane demo and you want people to be able to, guide themselves through a walkthrough, you can also have that. And then we're going to build a whole, there's so many things that you can build to help facilitate better education of your buyer, people connected with sales when it's appropriate. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. So
I may have missed this because I was off and on the Wi-Fi here, but where did the idea come from? How did y'all kind of, brainstorm this and then bring it to the launch phase?
Yeah. So originally Troy Munson, who's the co-founder, he's been blessed with the title CEO. I'm COO. None of it really matters because there's only 3 of us. And then we've got Lucas, who's like I don't know if we decided he's the chief engineering officer or the chief technical officer, but he's that guy. So nice. Troy messaged me back in January, and he was running what are called demo days. So essentially what he would do is, he hadn't even actually run the first demo day yet, but the idea was go pick 5 softwares that all cater to the same buyer. and then have them all run a 20-minute demo, and we'll bring an audience of qualified buyers to that demo. And then they can, again, see demos of software they might actually use, find out what's in the market, find out how people are solving problems, get educated really quickly without having to do 5 separate sales cycles. And then if they want to, they can follow up with those companies. They can ask questions. They can get involved. And so that's how we started. It was like these demo days. So Troy, because I have a pretty decent size following on LinkedIn, Troy had tapped me to try to like build up some groundswell and get people excited, because we started with go-to-market software. And he was like, so do you want to post about this? Is this something you're interested in? And I said, yeah, this is cool, but I think that it will only be so scalable because you are constantly having to run demo days. So you're always finding new customers. You're always finding a new audience. And you can grow your email list to get more people to come to more, but it still doesn't solve the problem of, I'm trying to buy something now. I'm trying to find out what's on the market now, when I actually have time, when it's top of mind. So I said, what you should do is you should take those demos and find a way to just put them in a marketplace. And then you have evergreen content, just like in journalism, like we were talking about before we started recording. There are evergreen stories out there. You can always talk about gift shopping around Christmas time, because it happens always. Like people are always evaluating software. So I was like, it's got to be evergreen. And then I was like, and then you can create a model where you can monetize that based off of the data that you're collecting around who's watching, what kind of questions they're asking, what areas of the demo are they actually looking at, what problems do they search for? Because imagine if you're building a new product and someone keeps searching for specific use cases that you could address, giving that information back to your marketing team or giving it back to your product team. I mean, there's so many cool things that you can do.
Yeah. I like that you kind of took like what would be sort of like an events business, because it was all about the demo days, and turned it into more of like an asynchronous, evergreen type content business. Is that, I think that's really cool that was the way your head went. Cause I think that's a way more scalable way than doing like very specific day and time demo days.
Yeah. And so we're still doing both. We still have demo days.
Oh, cool.
And one of the things that we found worked really well is we've done some bake-offs. So we got like Ample Market, Zoom Info, we got different data providers all in a room. And we said, all right, the 5 of you, let's hear it. Why would you buy Ample Market instead of Zoom Info? What is it like? What makes your data so special?
Cool.
And then so people who were all in the market for those softwares could just go watch all 5 demos back to back. People walked away with different impressions about that, I thought Ample Market was just a like sequencing platform. I didn't even realize they did data. I didn't realize that Zoom Info had built this chatbot that is AI based. Cool. Like there's so many different things that people were learning that they didn't really know about, because each company has its specific perception about who they are and what they do. So yeah, so we're able to do that. And then we're also running right now, we have Demo of the Week. And it's the People's Demo Awards, essentially. So we've taken all the digital sales rooms and basically said, go watch these demos, and whoever gets the most views is the winner. It's the People's Demo Award, because it's the one people want to watch the most.
This is amazing.
Yeah,
Sarah.
it's a super cool idea.
It's very interesting. This topic has just, I don't know why I used to listen to Tim Ferriss a long time ago, and I was a fan of AppSumo. When I was like, I don't know, it was 12, 15 years ago. And there was a guy named Neville, and they sold courses on there, and they talked about copy, and they would always like promote these like SaaS products or smaller products that weren't as
apps,
like enterprise.
Mobile apps.
And it's so funny that they've actually come back, like Neville and Noah Kagan and AppSumo. We were on their like sumo day last week, and I heard Neville on the Cast Magic, the Uploading podcast the other day. I'm like, this copy is coming back around. And it's like, what's going on? It's like all these journalists, all these copywriters. It's like people want to not just go into a demo. They want to be entertained and really not be preached to about features. They actually want to learn what's exactly for them.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So when people submit demos to us, we've had, it's like over 500 demo submissions, like, or people requesting to get their demo on the website since we launched. So that's 100 demos a week, 100 different companies. But we haven't, we've put a fraction of those on the website because, number one, we want to make sure that we're growing in categories where we can actually drive traffic. So go-to-market is a really good place for us to start because that's where our audience is. But two, we want to make sure that as we're building this out, that the way that people are demoing is actually what audiences want to hear. Because in our initial launch, we had 30 demos and people were pinging me and saying, hey, some of these demos are really good, but some of these are just like, it's just like a marketing ad. And I don't want that. I want to know what's going on.
The meat.
So so we're kind of coaching people on like, what is a good demo? And that's, it's pretty standard, but it's, what is the problem? What's your problem statement? What is the root cause of that problem? Why does it exist? And then how do you solve for it? So you should be really educational in how you're demonstrating to your audience. And the best account executives do this, and the best sales engineers do this when they're demoing a very tailored demo to an executive buyer or to their champion. But now you have to sort of do that at scale, make it really approachable and accessible. And that's why we have multiple demos that you can list on the website. So you can really talk to different personas. So, Sendoso can have multiple demos on the website talking about sales use cases and marketing use cases, as an example.
How are you growing the I guess maybe it's called the audience side of the marketplace, or the buyers themselves of the software? I'm sure, for a company like Sendoso, for example, there might be multiple stakeholders that need to be involved. How are you attracting those people to the site or to the content?
Yeah, so that's why we're running some of these competitions, right? Get people to go vote and go check it out. And then we do a bunch of stuff. So Troy does a demo of the day where he literally is like, hey, check out this piece of software. It's cool for these reasons. Here's where you can watch it. So that's one of the pieces that we're doing. And then we're building like a ton of content on LinkedIn. All the content that we've driven and the website visitors that we've driven so far have been specifically from Troy and I's content and from talking about Dimmo. And I think the last I checked last week, we had over 70,000 unique visitors to the website. We've had over people who've actually created users on Dimmo. We've had over 2,000, like 2,300 something companies, and multiple users under those. So those are companies that are like in market looking for a product or had signed up for an account, because you have to sign up for an account to watch demos. But all of that,
paid ads on that?
No, it's all just
organic.
It's all organic from LinkedIn.
Huge.
So that's why we're really focused on. We're like, okay, cool. We can run this machine with our audiences for go-to-market software is, where we really have a good niche. But then what's the next thing? And so we need to do SEO. So that means we need to convert our free customers to paying customers. And the way that I always talk about that is like, it's a partnership. You are, by you investing in us, we can invest in you. Like, we're three people, we're not paying ourselves. So any money that Dimmo's bringing in, we're just reinvesting back into the company to continue to build and to continue to drive. So we're launching a community blog, and I think that's going to really help with SEO. So essentially we've got, all of these different companies who are on Dimmo. They've all written great content about the unique problems that they solve. Let's get all of that on the website, and then people can start reading that. So we've got, so we'll have this blog that will then obviously pull traffic. And then the other thing that we do is we have our podcast, the Dimmo's 10-minute tech pitch. So,
nice.
All right.
Yeah. So if, you're trying to learn about software, I think it's good for people who are both like trying to buy and learn about software, but also people who are trying to find the next company they want to work for, the next startup they want to hang out with.
Yeah, that's great.
And the majority of the guests that we have are like CEOs or co-founders. Some of the bigger companies, it's like a VP of marketing or something who's coming on. And they're all under 10 minutes long, maybe 11 if I'm not very clean with my cuts.
So is it,
Yeah, like huge plug to just that podcast. Like I love podcasts, and just like you can just learn so much by like just cutting the grass and just putting that on. So I'll put this on, and I'll be able to learn about 15 different demos and 150
Yeah,
minutes.
that's nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Sarah, is it just you and Troy right now? How big is the team? It sounds like you guys have a lot of irons on the fire. I mean, podcasts and mail lists and blog content and organizing all of this and getting new customers. Like, how do you manage it all?
Yeah. So I don't really think that Troy sleeps, honestly.
You got to have a co-founder that doesn't sleep, right? That seems like a formula for success.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. So Troy's a guy who wakes up at 4 a.m. and starts his day. I don't.
Wow.
I don't wake up at 4 a.m. I'm too pregnant for that. Like, I'm lucky if I fall asleep, and then anyway. So I end up working later into the evening and when he's sleeping. But yeah, it's me and Troy, and then it's Lucas Schwarzenberg. Lucas does the engineering side, so he like built the website from scratch. That's why, like, if you go on to Dimmo, it's really, really fast. The mobile looks good. We're building a whole bunch of different features on the back end for companies that are listing their demos. And then we've brought on like 2 engineers on and off just for like a couple hourly things for like some stuff that we're trying to push on really hard. But the company is me and Troy and Lucas.
Wow. That's crazy. It sounds like you've gotten a lot done with a skeleton crew. So kudos. That's fantastic. And I'm sure there's a lot ahead, like as far as this, continued scale up of the company, and it'll be exciting to see you grow the team out too, and add more, people into the mix.
Thanks. Yeah. Fingers crossed. We'll see how it goes.
Sarah, I want to go back to the early days. And so I've been doing some digging on LinkedIn, and you said that you actually went to Western Kentucky University. So you were a journalism student, just like Jesse. And also looks like you were an actor as well. So,
oh, nice.
Are you still acting at all?
Not right now. The pandemic happened, and I basically tried to do some like weird online readings, and I was like, "This is awful. I'm not doing this." and then we moved from California to New York, and I was working remote, and I just wanted to focus on being good at my job. So I haven't done any acting recently, unless you count like being on Chris Bogue's improv Death by PowerPoint on LinkedIn, which if you haven't watched those, they're really funny.
I'll have to check this out now.
So I got a good quote on this. I just was at this keynote for this guy who was an executive at Disney for decades, and Disney's guest experience. And what he said was, all business is show business. And he was speaking to a group of like retail executives and finance executives and things like that. And I don't know, I can't stop thinking about that quote, because I'm like, yeah, every day we put on our acting hats and we jump on these Zoom calls, and, we pitch our products, we network with people, we try to add value. And it's like a little bit like acting in some ways, not that we're being disingenuous, but just you have to, have a certain persona that you put forward out there into the world, especially now in like a digital virtual world. So I guess in that sense, you are still in some ways acting, right? You're the acting co-founder of Dimmo. So
yeah. Also, as a former actor, I always get defensive because acting is not a disingenuous activity.
Right.
It has to come from a place of truth. Otherwise, people watch it on stage. They can't suspend their disbelief. They can't accept what you're doing because it's not real. We're really good. Our bullshit meter is super high. So if an actor is being fakey, then you're not going to believe it.
You can smell it. Yeah, exactly.
So just because
how do you lean into it? How do you lean into that feeling? Like that's what I want to learn how to do.
Yeah, I'm curious.
From an acting perspective, a lot of it has to do with psychology and empathy. I've made this comparison before, but if you are thinking about playing a specific character in a scene, the first thing you do is you ask yourself, who's this person and what do they want? What is their goal? What's their objective? You do the same thing when you're selling, right? When you are sitting down across the table from an executive or from someone who's requested a demo, you say, who is this person? So you go look them up on LinkedIn and you say, what do they want? And you go run some searches on their company and try to make a guess. And from that, you have a perspective about this person's objectives, their goals, why they might be coming to you. what they might not feel comfortable sharing versus what they will. There's always things that we hold back in conversation because we don't want to give away power or give away power too quickly, because we have to build trust in order to do that. So, as a salesperson, then my objective is, one, I want to make sure that we are qualified to actually help you, because otherwise it's a waste of my time and your time. And two, if we are qualified to help you and you have problems we can solve, it's how do I get you to the next step? And in order to get you to the next step is about trust. And so I have to figure out what makes you tick. I have to figure out what you want. I have to figure out what your unspoken concerns are and get you to speak them, so that, or at least sense them through your body language. And, you guys are all leaning with your hands on your chins, nodding along. Right.
We're being evaluated here.
Yeah.
Back to thinking, what are they going to say next?
Yeah. I can't remember what it's called, but my dad had an Audible book that was called like The Power of Body Language or something.
Yeah. I know that book. It has a weird title. It's really general, but every executive I've ever met has read that book, which is really interesting.
And it's not Chris Voss, but it's another FBI guy who's literally going through, how does your body communicate? Because you have your frontal lobe, which is doing all the logic, but you've got the rest of your brain, which is regulating. And we always are expressing our true emotions somewhere in our body. And so, like, what does comfort look like versus what does discomfort look like? And what does that look like with our feet? And what does that look like with our knees? And what does that look like with our hips? And what are we doing with our torsos? And what are we doing with our shoulders and our elbows and our hands and our face? And 80% of communication is nonverbal. So how can we break those things down? The other thing, when I taught theater I taught a middle school drama class and speech and debate. And my thing was always about breath, because that book will talk about it too, but you will start feeling an emotion before you logically are able to recognize it. So you won't realize that you're uncomfortable until you've already physically started to express discomfort. If you're cold, you're going to cross your arms, you're going to start fidgeting, and then you're going to go, gosh, I'm cold. But your body has already told you that you're cold. It's already started moving in a way that you're cold. It started showing you discomfort. Same with relaxation. So you guys were interested, you were listening. So you leaned and you were nodding and you weren't thinking, oh gosh, this is interesting, I'm so interested. You were just listening, but your body was telling me that you were listening. So we look for like these clusters of behavior. Anyway, the other thing I think is breath. If you can think about how you breathe in certain states and you then make yourself breathe in that way, you can create that emotion in your body and physically experience it. So joy is like the corners of your mouth go up and you have a little bit of a smile, and maybe your chest comes up and your posture becomes more erect. And then your breath will be an inhale with a pause at the top and then a sigh as an exhale. And if you start breathing like that, you will start feeling more elated and more joyful and more relaxed. So I always tell people, before you make a cold call, focus on your breath and you'll sound so much happier versus like, I hate my life.
Amazing.
And smiling. And it's like also like smiling on the call as well. I think that really can go through the other side of the customer or the person that you're reaching out to. And it's a human-to-human connection as well. And one thing that I have, as I call myself this recovering entrepreneur turned SaaS sales executive, the issue that I have and I experience that I'm selling to my buyers is I had a business and we spent 6 figures on paid ads, and we had an agency that had no data, and we were dealing with Facebook ads, and it was saying that we had all these conversions. Shopify said we had 0, and it was just a mess, and I was just pissed off. And so now I'm selling to those agencies and those agencies' customers, and I can empathize with them. And it's like, I know that you don't trust your data, and I know how that feels. And like walking into like a meeting with your agency and they're like, oh, everything's great. And you're like, no, we're not even bringing in any revenue. So I think if people can really lean into what are some things that you've actually dealt with in your life, and I think that can help you to find your next role. Like, who can you help because you have experience?
Yes.
That just going along, Sarah, with your like comments on empathy, it's huge, and it's a very underrated skill in sales for sure.
Well, so before I worked at Gong, I worked at a different company, and they really didn't have any visibility into what was working, why certain people were closing deals, why certain SDRs were sourcing meetings. So they had, like this wild gap between the top sourcing SDR, who probably sourced more meetings than the other like 48 reps combined. And
Wow.
so, she's sitting at like 200% of her number, whereas the rest of the team, and there were about 50 SDRs, were all under 50% of quota attainment. So you go, okay, well, what's going on there? And I mean, now that I've been in sales for a long enough period of time, I have some pretty good ideas about what was happening. But as a rep who had just started out, who had been before that acting in shows in San Francisco and working odd jobs to stay afloat and have health insurance, I was like, what is going on? Why can't I source any meetings? So Gong like solves those problems, right? Gong is all about visibility. It's figuring out what your top performers are doing differently and being able to replicate that. So I could come in and talk to people on a call and say, do you have this performance gap on your team? And I could literally describe my experience, and people would go, yeah, that sounds familiar. And then I could talk about my experience of being able to use that software to go from being one of the lowest performing reps at my first company to the number one rep at Gong, just by being able to listen to other people. So like I could, that story then becomes, you guys are saying, wow, that story then becomes compelling because I lived it and I felt that frustration. And then I can call people and I can kind of change the narrative depending on who I'm talking to, and shift perspective for being an individual contributor versus being a sales leader. But when you've lived something, and if you haven't lived it, that doesn't mean you can't do it. That's when you have to use your imagination.
I love that. Yeah.
Because, as an actor, like most of the time you're not living the sequel, right? You're not living, you're not in Russia and you've got a husband who patronizes you, and I'm thinking of A Doll's House right now, but like, that's not your world. It's kind of hard to imagine that.
Yeah. I've been watching some dark shows lately. I don't want to go there. I'm like, I don't even know. I'm like, dark show. It's like I'm like, oh gosh, if this is real, it's like, oh God.
Yeah, or think about like being Game of Thrones, right? Like you're supposed to be riding on a dragon. That's never happened, but you've definitely ridden on a roller coaster. You know what surprise and exhilaration feels like. And so you can start using that, or you know what anger and jealousy feels like, because pretty much every human emotion you've experienced by the time you're 18, and it's just taking that and context switching into a new scenario.
Wow.
Sarah, I have a question on your LinkedIn. You have like broken out the quota attainment that you have hit. Like, how are you tracking that? Back at your job at Gong, did they have like a system, or do you have a spreadsheet? Because it's like you have 600%, 200%, 100. You never hit below 100%. It looks like, and I want to know how you're tracking this, and if you have a ability that you have a way to do this.
Yeah, I was literally like breaking down because Gong would give us quarterly quotas as account executives, so I was just taking whatever number I closed and dividing it by the number that I was given to hit, and then putting it on LinkedIn before I forgot. That's how I tracked it. There's also some softwares.
Like Exactly is one of them. I've used Exactly before, which just gives you your attainment every quarter. There's like one other one, Quota Path, I think, is one.
Yeah, and then is it like Cap something? I can't remember what it is.
Caps, it's some very archaic name. Sorry, whoever it is, Capcentric, or it's something like that. Yeah, I've used that one too.
Yeah, so Gong had a software that it would use to track your quota, and then it would list out all your deals in your comp, and then you check it beforehand because they'd send it to you before they paid you, and so you can make sure there weren't any mistakes. And so I'd use that too, and then ping RevOps if something didn't look right.
And one thing I've done, velocity of Gong, like how, like was it just inbound after inbound, or was it mainly outbound that you were doing?
It was a combination, and it depended on like when you were selling. When I first joined Gong, the company total was I was in the class that got us to 100 employees. and half of them were in Israel and they were the engineering team. And then the other half was go to market. So there's, 12 SDRs total, and I joined as an SDR, and even less account executives, I think, or a similar number of account executives. So that was mostly like cold calls, emails. I was only outbound, obviously. We only had one inbound SDR. And then when I became an account executive, COVID had started. And so again, I did a ton of self-sourcing, especially in the very beginning, because I was just trying to build up enough pipeline that I'd have stuff to work from. But as the first year of COVID progressed, we got a ton of inbound too, because everybody was stuck in a remote environment and no one knew what was happening. You go from like walking into an office and you have some semblance of what's going on to all the lights are off. You're at home, you're in a silo.
Yeah.
And if you're a manager, how do you know what's happening in your reps deals, or if people are even working? Because a whole bunch of people got real sad and stopped doing that.
Oh gosh.
Sarah,
go ahead.
You're good. I have a question for you. This is, so you came onto my radar on LinkedIn. It was probably like 2019, maybe 2018 even. Talk to us about, so to preface the question, a lot of our listeners ask, how can I grow my influence and audience in my category, but also just like in general on social. And I'm looking at your LinkedIn, you've got like 85,000 followers on LinkedIn. And that seems like a, kind of almost like a meteoric rise in a very, very short amount of time. If you're willing to share, I know our listeners would love to hear how you went about growing your audience there. And I haven't looked at your X or your Twitter account or anything like that, but I'm sure it's also very significant. Tell us a little bit about how you kind of grew. And I know you were creating content because I used to see your posts all the time. I still see your posts all the time, but I remember when you first came on my radar, it was like there was a new post every single day, or maybe even multiple times a day. And I think that's probably when you grew your followership pretty, significantly. But tell us about that journey. I think it'll help our listeners a lot because we get that question pretty often.
Yeah. So I think it would be hard to do what I did again, the way that the LinkedIn algorithm seems to work today. But it was 2019 when you followed me, because that's when my LinkedIn blew up. And before that, I didn't really post. So I maybe made like a couple posts here and there, but I had cold called a VP of sales at the beginning of Q4. And he was real nasty to me. And he was like, it's Q4. You shouldn't be calling people. And yeah, exactly. That was my response. I was like, what?
Okay. Next.
And I kept thinking about it, and I told a couple people, like, this is the dumbest cold call I've ever had. Like, this is the dumbest objection from a VP of sales, from a guy who's like trying it.
Yeah.
So then I thought, I'll just post that. It's too funny. I'm just gonna post it.
No way.
And I did, and it blew up. And I have it like on my saved on my featured section, but it had like, I don't remember how many thousands of reactions and hundreds of comments, and it ended up getting like 2 million or something like that impressions.
Wow. No way.
Yeah. So that was like crazy, and then people were blown.
Was that an accident, basic? I mean, you didn't expect it to get 2 million impressions.
No, I thought it would maybe get like 5 likes, because that's like what my other post did.
And did Chris Orlob or did anybody at Gong, did they know that like LinkedIn was a good place to do this, or did this just were they like actively trying to get you all as sellers to?
Seems like it.
Be on LinkedIn?
No,
really?
Like Chris Orlob was writing content on LinkedIn because LinkedIn was a good place for us to generate traffic, because that's where all of our buyers were. And anyone who's trying to build a strategy, you should just go, where do your buyers live? So that means like, if your buyers don't live on LinkedIn and they live on Reddit, you should be running ads on Reddit, and you should have like a Reddit account, right? But what do salespeople do when they are prospecting? They're on LinkedIn. What do salespeople do when they're bored? They're on LinkedIn. Like, and we were selling to salespeople, and we were writing content for end users for the most part. So it's like, what do you need to do? Because if an end user is reading this blog on cold call tactics, and then it works, and then they share it with their team, then eventually their manager is going to see it. And the manager is going to go, oh, that's kind of cool. Where do they get this data? And then the first line is, we've analyzed 1 million sales calls. We've analyzed 756 cold calls, and here's the definitive best opener. It's like, well, where'd you get that data? And then that then prompts the manager or the director to then go figure out what Gong is and figure out how they're getting this information. And then they're like, oh, that's cool. I could do that to my sales team. Yeah, I want to try this. And then they go talk to sales, right? So that was like the methodology. So as a sales rep, when Chris Orlob posted, I would go and you liked it, you commented on it, you have the right title. I'd say, hey, I saw you engage with Chris Orlob's content. Curious if you've explored Gong outside of the content we create. And people be like, no, but I'd be interested. And then you could book meetings really easily. So SDRs were selling on social through Chris's content. And then I just happened to have that post that blew up. And then I was like, well, I should ride this wave, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so that's what I did. And the thing about, the LinkedIn algorithm doesn't work this way anymore.
It does not anymore, no.
But you could have this massive post that blew up, and then, your next post would equally get a couple thousand likes. Damn. And so the next post I wrote was like about coffee, I think, because I used to be a barista and I roasted my own coffee at home.
Oh,
and it was just like it was. And I made pour over. My husband told me we had to stop doing pour over because it took him too long to make coffee. So he bought a machine. That's funny. And the machine tastes exactly like pour over, so it's fine. Oh, yeah. But also I've been so poor, because I was working as a barista and an actor and a temp worker. So you can buy a pound of coffee for like $4 and roast it home, and it tastes just as good as like the $20 coffee that you're buying. So I wrote something about that, like roast your own coffee, you have more control, it's tastier.
I'm guessing too, like every time you posted, you would open up your LinkedIn and there'd be just like this list of people trying to connect with you. Cause I've had one, it is nowhere near the numbers you've had, but I've had one post that exceeded my expectations that I did not expect to. And I would open my LinkedIn and it was just this stack of people trying to connect with me. And I was like, that's cool.
Yeah. It was a deluge, as they say.
Yeah. Deluge.
And were you an SDR or an AE at this time, Sarah?
I was an SDR. I'd been an SDR for about, I've been an SDR for like maybe 4 months at Gong. Like, I think
that's awesome.
So yeah. So I was like, well, I'll just keep writing. And then I got into this pattern where I get to the office, I write my goals for the day. And then I'd make like 40 cold calls. And then I would follow up with anything in my inbox and send out emails. And then at 11 o'clock, I would write a LinkedIn post about whatever was top of mind. And, everything was new. I was learning so much. Mm-hmm. I'd gone from SMB SDR to enterprise SDR in a matter of 9 months. So that's a ton of learning. And, I'm talking to salespeople every day and prospecting. And so I just talk about whatever happened that day, what was working, whether it was, here's an objection and here's how I handled it, or here's an email I sent that got a response, or some kind of joke about one time I wrote, according to Salesforce, account executives only spend 30% of their time selling. The other 70% is spent waiting for Salesforce to load.
There you go.
And it was because Salesforce wasn't loading. And so I literally had nothing to do.
Random. That's awesome.
That post blew up. And I got a lot of really angry people being like, Salesforce changed my life. I was like,
well, really? So they say,
yeah, Chris Orlob, we had him on the show a few weeks ago, and he was like, the haters in the comments, he's like, that's where it's like the people in the comments can really just, it's crazy like what they'll come after you with,
And it seems like you have to be a little bit, polarizing is a strong word, I think, but you've got to have a stance, and it's okay if people are like, Salesforce changed my life. How dare you speak ill of Salesforce? Because it all it does is boost your impressions, because then people share it and look at what she's saying about Salesforce, and it just ends up like, it's viral. Like that's what's kind of interesting about the whole just social posting in general, but it does seem to also really impact LinkedIn.
The thing that blows my mind is social posting about most sales tactics is everyone should understand that in sales, just like when you are a carpenter, you have a tool belt, you have saws and screws and different types of saws and sandpaper and different textures of sandpaper. You have like a bajillion different tools. And you don't use sandpaper when you should be using a hammer and nail, right? Like those two things are not compatible. They don't solve the same problem. So you shouldn't get offended if someone is talking about ways that you can use a hammer and nail. Like, it's okay. And and you can have like debates about the grain of your sandpaper and what's the most appropriate and what's the prettiest finish. But at the end of the day, you're just expanding your tool belt. And it just it makes me lull when I see how angry people get. Like, I posted one time, Gong made us do a 4-hour cold call thing.
Like block.
Yeah, as a company. Yeah, it was wild.
Mm-hmm.
We had gotten a new executive leader, and they were like, cold calling works, so the whole company is going to cold call, and it's going to solve all of our pipeline issues. And
if only we would have thought of that.
Yeah, and then everybody's like trying to scramble to get enough people into a list to make 400 dials, which obviously you can't have a clean, good list, but whatever.
No.
I had so many thoughts, but I was like, I'm a trooper. Just because I don't necessarily believe this is the best way I could be spending these next 4 hours doesn't mean I have to knock it. Don't knock it till you try it. So I did it. And I ended up like really getting into the groove, and people were picking up, like phones were hot. So it was great. So I ended up booking a lot of meetings, and I came out of it feeling like, oh yeah, cold calls, they don't suck that much. Because if you stop making cold calls, you start feeling like, oh God, this is the worst thing ever. But if you get into the groove and you get a couple cold connects, like you're just rolling. If you have a power dialer, which I've only gotten to use like every couple, like I've used it maybe 2 or 3 times. I've gotten a chance to use a power dialer, but they're great.
We gotta get Orem in touch with you guys.
Yeah. So anyway, all that is to say, as I wrote a post about, I did this cold call block. Cold calls aren't that bad. I actually kind of liked it, and I booked some meetings. So if you're feeling like you don't want to make cold calls today, just know it doesn't suck as bad as you think it does. And then not on LinkedIn, but on Reddit, a bunch of people were like, and Bravado, that was the other one. They were like, she's so dumb. She's the worst. Talk about the worst.
Bravado's like a sales community.
What?
Yeah,
Bravado. Oh, that one.
Bravado.
So they so did you post on there, or they like took your post?
No, just random trolls out there, right?
Yeah. So they found, and then they had a whole, little did they know that at the time I was working with Bravado as like an ambassador for them. So I was reading all the stuff, and I was like, what the heck?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was real, and they got real nasty. And then it stopped being about like, it was just like, oh, she's insufferable, she's nails on a chalkboard, that kind of stuff, which is like, okay, you don't like the post. And then like there were comments about like debating whether or not I was hot, things like that. And you're like, what does that have to do with anything? So yeah, but all because you're just like, cold calls don't suck as much as you think they do.
Yeah, like a super well-intentioned post.
Yeah, swallow the frog. It's not as bad.
So, what is that like? Because I've heard that I'm in the sales subreddit, and I know that they talk about people that are out there putting out content and things like that. Like, did someone bring it to your attention, or did you stumble into it on either of those platforms, Reddit or Bravado? Or how did that feel too? I guess tell our listeners.
Yeah,
that's surreal.
So the first time anything got flagged to me, Corporate Bro had invited me and Collin onto a roast where the whole idea was he was just going to roast us, and we were going to hang out and talk about sales, and he'd be funny. And I was like, sure, that sounds fun. And then I think he had written like, hey, I'm going to do this thing on the sales subreddit. And then everyone was like, ew, why'd you pick her? She sucks. Man. But I didn't know, because I didn't get on Reddit, but someone forwarded me the thread, and
oh no.
It's like, why would you do that? If people are being mean to me, why don't you let me live in bliss and not know? Just let me pretend everyone likes me. So yeah, so I was like, oh, that doesn't make me feel good. So I think the first time it happens, I think it's always shocking to know that there are people on the internet who've never met you, who are making massive judgment calls about your personality or your work ethic or your knowledge set. Because most people on there are just like, she doesn't know what she's talking about. She's stupid. which, and then every once in a while, someone will be like, well, did you look at her quota attainment? She has to know something. But they're like, well, she's working at Gong, so that stuff just sells. It's like, no, it doesn't. You actually have to work.
You have to make the calls.
Yeah, and it's like even if it just sells, like you don't get to 200% quota attainment just by like chilling, just answering inbound.
No, you got to send them the payment link. Sorry, you still got to do that.
You got to have the conversations.
You got to have to send that payment link through Salesforce. If
it
loads.
So and there's like Gong is the most expensive thing on the market. So there's always something cheaper out there. So you're always fighting against either status quo or price. So how do you anyway?
Yeah.
So it didn't make me feel good. And then for a while, like the bravado got real nasty specifically about me. And then I was just sad. This was like a couple years ago. And that's when I stopped posting for a while. Cause I was like, well, it wasn't that I was like afraid people were going to make fun of me. It was that I just didn't feel like I had anything to say. And I was just like, it doesn't make me feel good. So why would I do that? And then, and then I got over it, and now I don't really care. But I think anybody, like anytime you're bullied, whether it's in real life or virtual or whatever, there's always this period where you're like, why would you do that? Why would you do that?
Yeah.
Why would you be a jerk like that? What's in it for you? And the reality is what's in it for you as a troll is that you really don't like yourself. And this is a place where you can feel powerful because you don't feel powerful in other areas of your life. And like, that was really clear to me because I went and I used my SDR skills and I, was like, who is this person? Let's go look at what else they post about on Reddit. And let's go see if I can like reverse engineer this and figure out who this person is. And I did. And I like,
no way.
And I looked up their LinkedIn profiles. And then they're like, has anyone noticed that Sarah Brazier's viewed my LinkedIn profile like a bunch of times today? I was like, yeah, because I'm trying to figure out why you are so angry. And then I'm like reading.
This is what I do.
This is sounding like Vanderpump Rules a little bit with like Jax and his little, it's like, oh gosh, the Reddit scandal. So
yeah, and then but like it's dumb. Like I shouldn't have cared, but I did.
That's all right.
But yeah, and then you find like the 24-year-old guy who still lives with his parents, and he's literally posting about it in a different subreddit and how depressed he is, and you're like. Okay, well now it makes sense that you hate me for no reason because I seem happy on the internet and you don't.
Jeez. Well, kudos to you for rising above. Amazing stories. I think you should write a tell-all at some point. We are at time, so tell our listeners where they can find you, where they can learn more about what you're launching, what you built, what you launched, I should say. Where can we all connect with you out there on socials?
You can connect with me on LinkedIn. That's where I post my posts and do my thing. But my name's Sarah Brazier, so go look me up there. And then if you're interested in Dimmo, go check it out. It's dimmo.ai. And you can watch demos on demand. Or if you've got some software that you are trying to create demand for and you want people to go watch your demo, you can submit a get listed request and we'll get you on there as fast as possible. And that's what's up.
That's what's up. And do you need a demo to get on Dimmo?
You can, yes. I mean, to have your company listed, you do need a demo.
Oh,
otherwise,
come on.
Pre-recorded. Yeah.
Okay. I love that.
But if you just want to go watch demos, you just need a business email, and then you can create an account.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Sarah. Have a great day, and this has been an amazing conversation.
Yeah. It has. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Thanks, Sarah. If you do any prospecting with LinkedIn, you have got to go get set up with Surf. That's SURFE. It's a tool you can use to add new contacts to your CRM system directly from LinkedIn in seconds. I'm using it every single day. I add contacts, follow my deals, keep track of notes, and it ends up saving me a bunch of time on prospecting and outreach, which means I can spend more time moving my deals along. The data is always 100% accurate since I don't have to copy and paste all the fields over from each and every contact that I want to put in my CRM. Instead, Surf does that all automatically with just one click in about 60 seconds. The team over at Surf has put together a very special offer for fans of sales players. There's a link down in the show notes, and you can use the promo code JWSurf5. Don't forget the E at the end of Surf. That's JWSurf5 for 5% off your first year. Don't spend another minute doing things manually. Go get set up with Surf.